Welcome back to another edition of Animal General with me, your host, Dr. Mike Hutchinson. In today's edition, I'm going to go back to your questions. And if you're new to this, please, if you're coming on for the first time, go to drmikehutchinson.com, just DRMIKE, Hutchinson.com, and there's a place where you can submit your questions. I'll try to get to them on a future podcast, or maybe I'll even send you an email to give you an answer if I don't think it's a topic I can cover on a podcast. But on this one, I want to go back to something I talked about on a previous podcast, grain-free diets. And the reason I want to talk about it is there was an FDA warning, and I did talk about that, but based on your questions, I want to cover a little bit more of that. So here's one sample of about 8 questions I received. It's from Carrie, and I don't mean to slight the rest of you that ask questions because they're all similar. But it says, Carrie, it says, Dr. Mike, is farm dog food safe, or is it on the list of foods to avoid in the grain-free dog food scare? Well, that's a good question, Carrie, and to all of you, I should have addressed this a little more thoroughly. I don't have a list of the foods. What happened in this, where the FDA gave the warning, is they started seeing dogs diagnosed with dilated cardiomyopathy. It's a condition of the heart that don't usually get dilated cardiomyopathy. The disease itself, the muscle gets thicker and thicker and bigger, and then they start to go into heart failure. Well, it's common in certain breeds genetically, Dobermans, Boxers, Newfoundlands, and some Cocker Spaniel breeds and some others, but it's not common in, say, Labradors or Golden Retrievers. On autopsies, or what we call animal necropsies, they found that there was an unusual increased incidence of dilated cardiomyopathies on dogs that don't typically get it. And when they looked at them and took thorough histories, they found that a lot of them, the common denominator was they were being fed a grain-free diet, a grain-free dog food. So then they looked further and found that some of those dogs, about 50% of them, were actually deficient in an essential amino acid that's called taurine. And amino acids are the building blocks of proteins. So the taurine has a function for the heart muscle, of course. It has a function in the back of the eye. It has a function in the brain. But some dogs, and dogs are supposed to produce it themselves. They don't necessarily have to have their diet supplemented with it. But in some of these grain-free diets, they use peas and lentils and potatoes for the grains, for the substitute. And those don't have high levels of taurine themselves, so they're not getting it in the diet, and maybe they're not synthesizing it. We don't quite know yet. So I can't give you a list of foods to say, don't feed this or feed this grain-free food, because if you've been out to the marketplace like I have, there's probably 80% of the bags of dog food have grain-free on it. It's for marketing, because they tried the gluten-free, because all of us humans associated it with ourselves, but the gluten-free is only in about one breed of dog where it's ever been seen. That didn't work. Veterinarians said, no, that's not necessary. So they went to grain-free. Now we're seeing this common denominator with the dilated cardiomyopathy. So we want to maybe talk to our veterinarian if you're concerned. I've had people call my practice, ask if I could do a taurine blood test for their dog, and I can, but it's a fairly expensive test. It's about a $300 test. And if I were to do that test and it came back low, I would supplement that dog with taurine. We can do that. As a matter of fact, when I get heart failure cases, I will put them on taurine and L-carnitine and some supplements that might help that heart muscle. But it's not a necessary supplement to give to every dog that's being fed a grain-free diet. So you will have to speak to your veterinarian about that. I hope that clears up the confusion. There is no list out there. The board-certified cardiologists, the pet food manufacturers are all having a look at this, and the FDA has oversight, and they're just put out a warning to make the veterinarians and you, the pet owners, aware of it, and I think that was a very good thing. Thank you for listening. Remember, don't just live and let live, but live and help live.